It feels like I just met Maria yesterday. On this busy Saturday afternoon, the mall was full. There were Christmas lights all over the place, and the air smelled like pine and cinnamon. I saw her as I rushed around to find last-minute gifts for my family. She worked at a trendy clothing store behind the counter. She had long, dark hair that was curled around her neck. While she talked to people, her brown eyes sparkled, and her warm smile drew me in. So I could start a talk with her. I quickly walked inside and tried to look interested in her awful holiday sweater. "Would I be able to help you find something?" she asked in a kind and understanding way. I stumbled over what I was saying and thought of a shy teenager. Okay, I'm looking for a gift for my..." She laughed so hard it made my heart skip a beat. "Oh, unless your sister is really funny, I don't think the sweater is the best choice." After talking for a while, I found out her name was Maria. I got her number when I left the store, and we set up a date for the following week. On our first date, we went to a fast food restaurant because it was the only thing I could afford at the time. We sat at a greasy table and talked for hours while eating hamburgers and fries. We learned we went to the same elementary school but had never met. She said, "Perhaps it's fate," and I smiled like a fool. After that, we couldn't stop talking. We got along great. We had a great connection right away because we both liked funny things and saw each other as friends. A year later, I proposed to her on one knee with a ring I had been holding on to for months. Our first few years of marriage were great. We decided not to have kids because we wanted to focus on our business and spend more time together. Maria would be so proud of me that she would say, "Johnson, I'm so proud of you," while grinning. Everything was good until it wasn't. When Maria lost her job, it all started. Something had happened at work. Even though she never gave me the entire story, I knew it caused her to question herself. I initially made an effort to assist her by advising her to take a break and regroup. "Hon, don't worry about it." As the days went by, I tried to be patient and understand that she was having a hard time, but my anger grew. "Have you thought about looking for a new job?" I'd ask her gently, but she'd respond with a defensive glare and a mean voice. "Why, so I can be humiliated again?" she'd ask. But the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Maria seemed to lose all motivation. She'd spend her days lying on the couch, binge-watching TV shows, or scrolling through her phone. Our once clean house started to look like she hadn't been taking care of it, with dirty dishes in the sink and laundry overflowing from the hamper. It used to be that when we talked, we laughed and talked about our dreams. Now, when I got home from work, I was hoping to find some comfort or connection. But Maria was either fast asleep or on her phone, hardly noticing my presence. Physical intimacy, which had been so important in our relationship, started to fade, and when I tried to initiate, Maria would come back with headaches or fatigue. I felt like a stranger in my own home, disconnected from the woman I had fallen in love with. As the weeks went by, a doubt kept growing in the back of my mind. Was there something more going on? The Maria I knew, the lively, kind-hearted woman who had won my heart in the mall, seemed to have disappeared, replaced by this distant, irritable stranger. I tried to ignore these thoughts, telling myself that it was just a phase. One night, after another quiet dinner where Maria's fork scraped against her plate, I decided to try to talk to her again. "Maria," I said softly, "I'm worried about us. Can we talk about what's going on?" She looked up at me with dull, guarded hazel eyes. For a split second, I thought I saw a glimpse of the old Maria, a hint of vulnerability or even regret, but her expression hardened, and she pushed away from the table. "There's nothing to talk about," she muttered, taking her phone and going to her bedroom. While I sat there by myself and looked at the food, I couldn't get rid of the thought that our relationship had changed in a big way. Still there. It looks like the woman I had built my life around and planned to spend my later years with had moved on. I didn't know how to get her back. Maria was in pain from the start. I saw that she couldn't stay still. One night at dinner, she was always moving. When I asked her if she was okay, she pushed me away and said the food wasn't good. After a week, I found her crying on the floor of the bathroom. "Maria, what's wrong?" I got down on my knees next to her and put my arm around hers. She looked away with a moan. "It's not really comfortable, to be honest. Something is wrong down below." Though I helped her get up, I was scared and drove her home. I tapped the chair cushion and looked at her, but she didn't seem to be answering. It seemed like the doctor was taking a long time to call. Dr. Allen finally called us in. He checked us out and then gave us a serious look and said, "Maria, you have signs of rectal prolapse. This is something we should be aware of." Prolapse of the wall of the rectum? I had not even thought about that idea. But why? How did this happen? Maria spoke very slowly. Dr. Allen explained what was wrong, gave her medicine, and told her not to garden for a while. The words had a bad smell to them. "Are you having fun in the backyard?" When I looked at Maria, her cheeks turned a scary shade of red. The silence on the way home felt like a charge we didn't say. As soon as we got home, we spoke in a very serious way. "Maria, you heard what the doctor said. Don't take part in the events in the backyard." I didn't know. This is something I didn't know. On the couch, she played with a loose thread. "Someone else did it, we don't do that." I had the idea out of the blue, and when I told someone about it, my thoughts moved quickly. Was it something from her recent past, or was it something else? That night, I sat down at my laptop and read a huge number of articles about rectal prolapse. The blue light hurt my eyes. Looking at numbers and telling scary stories. It became clearer to me that someone was guilty as I read more. Maria got over how distant she had been for a few months very quickly. Her strange absences, her distant looks, and the fact that she talked about Scott, the high school boyfriend she used to date. My jaw tensed up. Was the ex-boyfriend the subject of the story? The next day, I told her about it. "Maria, tell me the truth. Is Scott to blame?" She gave me a big eye look. "Why is that?" "That is not how it works. Maria, I'm not sure about you. The signs don't match up with what the doctor said. Tell me the truth." She kept talking. Even though her voice was shaking, I tried it once, in high school with Scott. It was just once. I swear her defense made me even more angry. What's going on now can't be explained by going to high school. I said that there's something wrong. As I yelled and ran out of the room, she turned away. Because I couldn't concentrate that day, I looked up motion detector cams in the breaks. If she wouldn't tell me the truth, I would find it out on my own. It wasn't hard at all to set up the cams. I was very suspicious, so I hid them in different parts of the house. After a few days, nothing happened, and I started to wonder if what she said was true. I was wrong. Up until Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed whenever it sensed movement. At that moment, I was in chemistry class. After seeing the movie, it hurt my stomach. Maria was seeing someone else. It's hard for me to remember the exact moment I let the class go. As I drove home, my hands were shaking from being so mad. With each thought, I went to a darker place in my mind. When I got to our front door, I could see red. My heart was beating like a bass drum as I crashed through the front door. It was almost possible to feel the stress in the air. I saw the man kissing Maria through the window in the living room. The way her lips touched his confirmed everything I already thought. Scott, Maria's boyfriend, stood still and barely buttoned up half of his shirt. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. Maria's eyes got really big with fear. "Maria, what are you talking about?" When I yelled, my words echoed off the walls. In that very moment, I felt both sad and angry. "Johnson, it's not what you think," she said with her hands raised. She shook as she wrapped a towel around herself. "We are able to fix this." Scott quickly looked around the room to see how he could get out of there. "Hey, that's not it. Stop talking." When I spoke up, he backed off because of how strong my words were. My hands were shaking as I pulled my phone out of my pocket and said, "I have video of everything." I then played the clip for them. When they knew they were being found out, their faces turned pale. "There was no going back on this. Maria's front is broken. Keep your hands off of it, Johnson." I laughed out loud. "How long will this situation last?" First Scott looked at me, then he looked at Maria. "Hey, it's been a while. I'm sorry it all began when she lost her job." "Okay then." She slouched, and the person I knew looked like has died, replaced by this shell full of guilt and hopelessness. Scott went on, but he couldn't look at me. We were not paying attention, and this had been going on for months. It wasn't a problem from the past when she ran into it. It's up to date as of now. My heart felt like it was being cut open by his voice. After being lied to, I had a strong desire for revenge. "You two are really annoying," I spat out. I spoke in a low, mad tone. "Leave. Right now." Maria stood there with tears running down her face as Scott quickly grabbed his things. "Hey Johnson, come on." Her voice broke as she begged. She looked down because she didn't have the guts to say anything else. Scott moved. Carefully making their way to the door, they left the house without looking back. It looked like Maria was carrying her own shame as she walked slowly behind them. After they both left, the house went quiet. Since the living room was now empty, being lied to felt like a heavy blanket. Taking a deep breath helped me calm down, but all I could think about was getting even. That evening, after Scott and Maria left, I was sitting in our poorly lit living room by myself. All that could be heard was the noise of traffic far away. My thoughts were clouded by anger, lying, and a need for revenge. I made a drink for myself. It burned my throat and made me feel like I was on fire. It wasn't the only thing going on. It was meant to be. To destroy everything I had made. It was very important that I make a plan right away. When I called in sick the next morning, I had a clear head and a strong desire to end their lives the same way they had ended mine. Every idea I could think of was written down when I got to my desk. One of my first goals was to text Scott and ask to meet up. I was shocked when he agreed right away. A rundown cafe off the main street was where we met. When he saw me walk in, his eyes were flashing quickly. He looked like he was tired. "Jones, what do you need?" It was agreed that he would slouch and say, "You look like crap, Scott, today. You're going to stop working and pay alimony." "I will make sure that everyone sees the video if you don't." Scott's eyes got bigger. With a cold voice, I leaned in and said, "Watch me," I told him. "You can't ruin my life like that, that's not possible." Scott dug his heels into the ground, which told me he got it. I finished my coffee and enjoyed the taste of success that was about to come. Maria's high school love, Scott, was someone else I had to deal with, even though he was Maria's. The next step was to talk to Maria about it. Before coming back the next day, I slept somewhere else to clear my mind. To keep her busy in our kitchen, which still made me think of good times. Scott agreed to give his ex-wife money. "Right from the start, I told you that you would sign the divorce papers." When Maria looked at me, her eyes were filled with tears. "Johnson, don't do that." I moved my finger across my phone's video. "Now is the time to sign the papers." She did what she was told. However, her hands were shaking. There was a scary vibe in the air. Lied about trust and threatened to kill everyone there. I quickly packed my things and turned in the movie that evening so I wouldn't have time to think about the memories. It spread like wildfire online in hours and ruined Maria's image for good too. The views were harsh and wouldn't change. The people in her family stopped talking to her, and she kept getting mean and disgusting texts on her phone. "As soon as possible, cut all links." I just moved into a new apartment that looks out over town toward a park. It was a big change from the sad and depressing life I had been living. When I took a big breath of fresh air every morning, I could feel the ties of my past falling away. No one answered the phone when Maria called. Her cries went unheard, and she had to deal with being made fun of every day in public, with people pointing fingers and talking about her behind her back. I found myself in front of the old apartment building one time because I was morbidly interested in it. Because she hadn't slept enough and had been teased in public, Maria looked pale and tired when she went out. Her eyes didn't have any spark in them. But Scott wasn't there anymore. I had heard that the scandal was making it hard for him to get a steady job. His social media accounts were gone, and every blank page was proof of how bad things had gotten for him. I wanted them to hurt, and they did. Inside, I felt a strange mix of happiness and sadness. After I moved into my new house, I went back to reading, working out, and even playing chess. I planned fun things for my kids to do. As they talked and smiled, the new song blocked out the memory of the lie. Little by little, I began to get back the parts of myself that I had lost in the chaos. One night, I was reading a paper about a complicated chemical process for a class I was going to be in the next day. The modern exercise equipment in the corner and the framed chess problems hanging on the wall made me think of things from my past. I stopped and looked around my apartment. I was no longer afraid of the past. It was just a dirty page from a book that I picked up and put down. I no longer cared about Maria and Scott. They were the remains of a life that had been cut short by lies. From what I could see, it wasn't just about getting back at them, even though they had hurt me. It was also about finding out who I was again. It was mine, even though it wasn't simple or exact. I was looking out the window of my new flat at the busy city below when It looked like the stress of the past few months had finally gone away. After going through a lot of different feelings and actions, I was starting to feel like myself again. When I opened the second message from Maria that rang my phone, I knew what to expect. "John Doe, please listen. I'm ready for everything. Take a break from this." I sighed in sadness and anger. It was tempting to ignore her, delete the message, and forget about her, but I felt I had to answer again to be clear. "I've made up my mind, Maria. Pay attention to what happens after you do something. That is going to be helpful. I have to stay here. You can say sorry, but the hurt you caused me and the trust you broke will always be there." I pressed send on my phone and then dropped it on the couch. It buzzed right away again, but I didn't pay attention because I knew what it would say. "Please give me more pain and promises." I made myself a glass of water instead in my tiny kitchen. As I drank, I thought about how Maria's life ended when I kicked her out of our house. It was hard for her to find a place to stay, and her family had left her because of what she had done. That movie I said I would send around cast a shadow over her, making it nearly impossible for her to find work in our area, even though I never did. I wasn't sure if I had gone too far, and I felt bad about what I had done. I couldn't help but notice how she looked when I saw her with Scott, though. During the months when they lied and were not honest. It wasn't her I made the choice. Now she had to deal with what it meant. Scott, on the other hand, wasn't getting better. After I made him quit his job, it was hard for him to find a stable job, and the alimony payments I wanted him to make were really hurting his finances. He had to go back to his small town and live with his parents when I last heard from him. The noise on my phone started up again, but this time it was stronger. I moaned as I thought about it. It was Maria, and I played her message even though I knew it wasn't a good idea. She cried so hard that her voice cracked. "Johnson, please help her. I know what I did wrong. I'm sorry I made you feel bad, but I need your help badly. If you let this go, I'll pay you anything. I'm not able to. I don't want to live like this. I beg you, please." As hard as I could, I deleted the message. Did she think the money would make her worries go away or free her from her duties? I pressed the end call button and called her back. The first time it rang, she picked it up. "Johnson?" "Thank God." I told her to stop. "Maria, pay attention. It's not about money. It's no longer the goal to get even. It's about taking responsibility for what you do. What you did was your choice. You lied to me, let me down, and threw away everything we had worked on together. Why is that the case? A one-night stand with your high school boyfriend." On the other end of the line, I could hear her crying. I wanted to convince her that everything would be okay, but I still fought that urge. That was no longer my job. "Maria, I'm not going to give up on this. Just like me, you have to deal with the pain you caused. The only thing that's changed is that I think it's time for you to move on too." I hung up before they could answer. When I put down the phone, my hand began to shake a little. In fact, it was done. I went back to the window and looked at the city some more. The houses were lit up with a nice glow as the sun went down. Seeing the sun go down felt like a metaphor for that part of my life. I finally signed the divorce papers with my lawyer the next day. As I signed my name on the line, I felt a strange mix of feelings. Anger about what really happened, sadness about what might have happened, and mostly relief. The job was done. As soon as I left the lawyer's office, I decided to go for a walk in the park. It was cold outside, and the leaves crunched under my feet. I felt free and light for the first time in months. I thought about Scott, who was living with his parents and was broken from his mistakes, and Maria, who was having a hard time in San Francisco. Even though it made me sad to see them hurt, I didn't feel bad about it either. Because they made a choice, they had to deal with what happened. I was ready to accept what would happen. A place where no one tricks or lies to each other? Thank you. I longed for a time when everything that had happened would no longer bother me and I could be myself again. As I sat on a bench, I watched people walk by while holding hands, laughing with their friends, and holding hands with their kids. I told myself that life goes on and so will I. In my pocket, my phone shook. This time, it wasn't Maria, Scott, or anyone else from my past. On a whim, I downloaded the dating app last week, and it helped me learn some things. Someone matched me. I smiled as I swiped to see their picture. It's possible that this was the start of something new and better. As I stood up to go on, I felt at peace. I could move on from the past and look forward to what was to come. I was excited to see what it brought for the first time in a long time.